Have you ever felt like your prayers are just hitting the ceiling? Like you're talking, but nobody's listening? Well, today we're going to dive into a really powerful framework from Apostle Michael Orokpo. It completely reframes prayer, not as some religious duty, but as a dynamic, multifunctional tool that can create real-world change.
And right off the bat, this idea completely flips the script on what most of us think prayer is. The source suggests that the most critical part of prayer isn't our performance, how loud we are or how long we talk. It's about our ability to be quiet and actually listen for a response. Victory isn't in our monologue, it's in what comes back to us in the dialogue.
So, that really boils down to this one simple question for all of us. When you pray, is it a one-way speech? Just a list of demands and complaints sent up to the sky? Or is it an actual conversation? This single question, you guys, is the key that unlocks this entire framework we're about to explore.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to redefine prayer, moving it beyond just counting the hours. Then, we'll break down the three core functions: communion, legislation, and intervention. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see how these three combine to unlock your true potential.
All right, first up, we have to tackle a really common pitfall. The source material calls this moving from drama to encounter. And it's all about shifting our focus from the performance of prayer to the actual purpose of prayer.
Yeah, just look at this contrast here. On the one hand, you've got the drama approach. It's all about time, volume, and performance, right? It's measured in hours, but where does it lead? Burnout. But on the other hand, you have the encounter. This is focused on dialogue, on inner transformation, on building real spiritual strength. And it's not measured in time spent, but in tangible results.
And listen, the stakes here are incredibly high. According to the source, this isn't just about a style preference. Relying on the drama of prayer means that when a real crisis hits, when you actually need strength, you'll find that your spiritual muscle is small. Not because God is weak, but because your foundation just wasn't built correctly.
So, what's the solution? What's the right way to build that foundation? Well, it's this three-step protocol. It all starts with communion, which is the dialogue. Then it moves into legislation, the action. And finally, it's sustained by intervention, the defense. Let's break down each one.
So, let's start with the absolute foundation of effective prayer, that first function, communion, the two-way conversation.
So the crucial point to get here is that communion isn't about you just talking at God. It's a true dialogue where your main goal is actually to hear back from Him. It's about creating space for an encounter, not just filling the air with a bunch of your own words.
And the source uses this brilliant analogy to explain the process. Think of your potential like raw crude oil. It's full of value, right? But it's totally unusable in its current state. Prayer, specifically communion, is the heat. As you apply that heat consistently, day after day, valuable things like gasoline, petrol, even gas start to separate out. What was once just a raw, messy substance becomes multiple forms of powerful, refined fuel.
Okay, so once that foundation of communion is laid, we can move to the second function, legislation. This is where prayer stops being passive and becomes this active force for actually changing your circumstances.
Now, this is the power to legislate, to actively insist on a different reality. The source emphasizes that God has given humanity authority here on earth, but it's up to us to use prayer to demand and enforce the changes we need to see. It's about taking powerful spiritual action. The source shares this incredible story from Pakistan that just brings this to life. After he was done preaching, the crowd was really skeptical. They started demanding, "Where is your God? Show us your God." And feeling the pressure, Apostle Orokpo just prayed a simple prayer, "Lord, help me." And at first, nothing. Then, a shout from the crowd, "I can see." Turns out, a man who had been blind for 8 years had his sight totally restored. That is prayer as legislation, insisting on a change until it actually manifests.
And this quote right here, it just captures the entire mindset you need for legislation. This isn't about some casual request. No, it's a position of tenacity. You engage in prayer with the explicit purpose of seeing a situation change, and you persist. You do not give up until it does.
But this kind of power doesn't just happen overnight. The source compares it to going to the gym. When you first start lifting weights, you don't immediately see big muscles. You feel pain. And honestly, a lot of people quit right there. But if you push through, that initial pain is what builds long-term strength. Legislative prayer is exactly the same. It's the consistent lifting of that spiritual iron that builds the power to change things with just a single word.
And that brings us to our third and final function, intervention. So if legislation is your spiritual offense, think of intervention as your spiritual defense system.
Yeah, think of it like this. You're creating a spiritual radar. It's a surveillance system you build through consistent prayer that literally watches over you, protecting you from attacks you don't even see coming. It's proactive, not reactive.
The source uses this beautiful metaphor from Scripture to explain it. Each prayer you pray is like a single drop of water evaporating and rising into a cloud. You might not see the immediate effect of each one, but you keep praying, and the cloud keeps filling, until one day, when trouble shows up, that stored-up power empties itself as a downpour of intervention right when you need it most.
So how does this actually work? Well, by consistently giving yourself to prayer, you release what the source calls utterances, and these form a kind of protective shield around you. This shield provides surveillance even when you're sleeping or totally unaware, and it ensures that what was meant to be a day of attack instead becomes a day of testimony.
Okay, so we've seen the three functions: communion, legislation, and intervention. But what's the ultimate goal here? What's the point? It's about combining all three of these to finally unlock your full potential.
And here's the final analogy that ties it all together. Everything God has for you, all your gifts, your calling, your potential, it's like water in a deep well. It's there, it's available, but it's not going to jump out on its own. You have to actively draw it out. And the bucket you use is this threefold cord of prayer.
And this is the sobering warning from the source. The idea of getting to heaven and discovering that you only ever became 1/10, just 10% of the person you were created to be. Without actively drawing out that potential, we seriously risk living just a fraction of the life we were meant for.
And that leaves us with a final, crucial question. It's not just about what you pray for. It's about what you were made for. Looking at this framework, it really forces us to ask ourselves, what power, what purpose, what potential is sitting deep down in the well, just waiting for you to draw it out?